everyone. This is Reverend Aphren with the Four Pillars Proto Temple. So I'm finishing up my walk now and I'm returning back to the car. As you can see, I'm out in the wilderness. One of my favorite places on earth, the Green Cathedral, they call it here. I'm heading back now from a little impromptu sort of prayer that I was doing. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that too. I found, since my elevation, that I have this newfound freedom that I didn't really have before. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that now I've given myself permission in some ways to be myself and to be who I am and what my practice is personally. Up until this point, I've spent most of my life trying to perfect my understanding of other people's practices, trying to learn how to practice that properly, correctly. But now I'm finding that I'm opening up. I'm finding freedom in what I do, what is important and special and effective for me in a personal practice. It's in a way that I've never really done before. So I find that really interesting, and I find the fact that it's taken this long to do that. But I think, as I said, in a lot of ways, having my third degree has kind of opened me up to that freshness and freedom that I really didn't have before. I brought with me my walking stick. Not exactly a walking stick. I've never really used it as a walking stick up until today. I have used it in ritual, and it's kind of become, for me, a ritual implement. So I use it when we're doing meditations or working that has to do with the axis mundi. Anything like that, I really try to incorporate that into. So I have used it in that sense, but I've never really used it as a walking stick. And today I decided to bring it along with me because I was going to use it for the same purpose I do in ritual, but out here in the world. I decided that as I was walking, that the how do I explain this in the best way? The walking stick, the staff that I had been using in ritual, had become for me a companion. It had become for me a guide and a guardian. If I were to be in trouble, the walking stick would serve as my protection. If I were to slip and fall, the walking stick would be my support. And it kind of, in some ways, as I was walking, became a metaphor for my religious practice and my religious experience and for my relationship with the gods. And so I find it really interesting that I'd never brought it along before. And it started to allow me to be open and to realize some of the things that I had always been had an affinity toward. For instance, I have always been full of respect and admiration for elders. In particular, the archetypes of the crone and the sage, or the sorcerer, as we call it. And I never really explored that too much. I'd always had admiration and respect for, these wise old wizards, Merlin and things of that nature with his walking staff and the whole thing. And I never really explored that before, but I'm coming to realize now, with this sort of freedom that I have, that for me, that is really one way that helps me to connect with the divine and to find a way to live my path with wisdom and strength. I think of the image on a lot of tarot decks of the Hermit, especially the Wider Right Tarot, where the Hermit is, an older person wearing a robe with a staff and a lantern. That lantern, of course, representing wisdom, but also representing the light that guides and lights the way for us. And And I'm beginning to identify myself with that a little bit more. And it's something that I kind of have always, again, had an affinity toward, but not something that I ever really explored in that way. So I decided to do a little impromptu, excuse me. I decided to do a little impromptu prayer. I brought the walking stick. The walking stick, again, represented for me the axis mundi, the phallus of the god, the time, the line of time and space that moves ever forward. And I use that in some ways, as the Druids do, as the central point of their ritual. And I use that as the axis mundi, giving offerings at the base of it, lighting candles and giving offerings. I have pictures I will post later. But it was very touching for me just to come out here and be out here. I love being out here in the woods, in nature, experiencing the divine in its natural state. So it definitely was a time of reflection for me, and I encourage each of us to spend that time in reflection, take that time away. We don't necessarily have to be alone or have to be segregated all the time, but it's important that we have private time and that we have time where we can spend reflecting and connecting. That's very, very important. So continue to do those things, continue to reflect and find ways to connect with the divine. I know each of our lives is very, very busy. Many of the members of our temple are very busy with many, many different things. Having children, having families, having jobs. Mine lately has become quite it definitely extends far out of the time that I'm spending at work itself. So it's important that we take that time to connect with the divine in the way that is best for us, in the way that they represent themselves to us. Please continue to do that. That's really all I have to say at this time. Until next time, signing off for now.